Hello and welcome to another episode of the Conversation Series with African film professionals on Cinidb Africa. My name is Jacqueline Nsinya and I am the project manager of the platform. Together with my wonderful team, we curate and update the information on a regular basis. Cinidb in its finished state will be a multilingual networking and information platform for film professionals in and of Africa. The platform will host information on everything African film related, such as a film professional directory, information about film education, film festivals, and markets. We have hundreds of professionals already registered, and we invite you to register as well. This conversation series is part of Cinidb aim to promote exchange between film professionals. We will keep you informed on the upcoming ones, so please follow us on Facebook, on our new Instagram page and Twitter. You will find links underneath this video. Today's conversation is on film education, a case for film schools, and a conversation between filmmaker and educator Idrisu Morakbai and Dylan Valley, moderated by our very own Katarina Hedren. This conversation was pre-recorded and I hope you enjoy it and can share it amongst your networks. Our next conversation will take place on the last Thursday in July and will be on film criticism and journalism. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Katarina Hedren. I'm film critic and also part of the Cinidb team. I am very happy to be here today with Idrisu Morakbai and Dylan Valley to talk about film education in general, and as it pertains to Africa and African filmmakers in particular. But we'll see how we straight those lines, if there are any lines or that's the topic for today. I'm very, very pleased to introduce you both. Thank you for accepting the invite. I'm going to start telling you about Idrisu Morakbai. He's an award-winning Beninese filmmaker whose films have been screened at numerous international film festivals, such as in Berlin, Rotterdam, Vienna, Milano, Busan, Sheffield, garnering many accolades. His filmography includes America Street, Indochina, Traces of a Mother, Elit, The Second Paris, and Sigueriki, The Queen Mother. Idrisu has produced and directed several short narratives and made a name for himself with his social documentaries tackling post-colonial African societies, migrations, and diasporas. He's a recipient of the Dutch Prince Claus Award for his artistic achievements dedicated to promoting social change in the global South. A graduate of the Konrad Wolf Film University in Germany, Idrisu has been a guest artist and visiting faculty member at Cornell University, Duke University, and the University of Pittsburgh. At present, he is an assistant professor in the Department of Media Arts, Sciences and Studies at Ithaca College. Dylan Valley from South Africa is an award-winning filmmaker and educator who sees films as a tool for social change. His virtual reality 360 documentary Azibuye, The Occupation, premiered at Sundance Film Festival in 2020. Dylan has directed work for Al Jazeera, Arte, and the South African Broadcasting Corporation, and among his films are Africa's The Uprising of Hangberg, Jumwa, and Incarcerated Knowledge. He's on the editorial board of the Pan-African platform Africa is a Country. He's currently a lecturer at the University of Cape Town's Center for Film and Media Studies, and before that, a lecturer at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, where he pursues a PhD in media studies. In 2013, he received a Pulitzer Fellowship from the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, where he received his master's in specialized journalism. Do you feel duly introduced?
Very much.
Thank you.
Cool. Good. So, pleasure to have you here. So, if we could just start with you talking about your own experiences, reflections as film students, as we start there. You all, I mean, you're former film students, you are filmmakers, active filmmakers, and you're also educators at the present. So I'm going to ask you to talk from all these perspectives. But if we start to talk about your experiences of your film studies, why you chose to study film and the institutions of choice. If we start there. Idrissa, do you want to start?
Okay, yes. Thank you, Katrina. And thank you, Dylan. I'm glad, to be here with you. I grew up in Benin, West Africa, where uh, there were no possibilities to study film, in the 80s when I finished my high school. I never thought I could study film. Always fascinated by film, watching film, but making film has never been something I thought I could do. And until I came to Germany to study, and once here, I realized that I could study film. And in the 80s, there were two schools in Berlin at the time, the FFB and and HFF, which became after a couple of years ago, a University for Film and Television. So I applied for both schools, and I've been accepted in Conrad Wolf University. So yeah, that's it.
And what brought you to Germany in the first place? Did you say that?
I came to Germany for my education. I haven't been here with scholarship. I come by my own, right? And I was trying to study different things, architecture, mathematics, and journalism. And so I first started studying mathematics, at TU Berlin, which was the Technical University of Berlin. And while studying under TU, I realized that I want to make film. I started making film, in life while studying. And at some point, I realized that I really want to study film. I have to go to a film school, right, to be able to tell the story I want to tell. So I applied for the film school. It has been a long story, because from my study of math, I moved to Freie University of Berlin to study journalism and North American studies. So, but during all this time, I was working, let's say, as documentary filmmaker between journalism and documentary filmmakers, right? And at some point, I thought it would be better for me to go to film school, to get, to get used to the tools and storytelling and so many things, you can learn in the film school. So I applied for the school, and yes.
And yes. If you look back now, like in university, Conrad Wolf in the 1980s, what stood out? What stood out? What still remains with you today from your experiences then?
It was interesting. It was interesting being there. The school has been a traditional film school for Eastern Germany at the time, right? So there was a kind of a philosophy for this school. For most of my professors, were committed filmmakers, right? With this socialism background. And for me, coming from a underrepresented community, it was interesting to meet all these people. It was an inspiration, really, to have professors like Frank Byers, like Ryan Simon, like so many names, and people who were filmmakers, very important filmmakers from Eastern Germany that were my professors. So I have learned a lot from these people, and it's it's been really an exciting time for me. And at the same time, you can see the movement of Germany, the change in Germany, right? At the beginning of the 90s, moving from Western Germany to the big Germany, and all the change, all the dynamic, right, at the time that was all going on, while being educated in this school. You have professors during my time who came from the West, right, who, don't necessarily share the philosophy of the school, but brought another, background in filmmaking, so what art mean, freedom in art, right? And so having all these people being exposed to these different people, contribute really to what I became today, right?
Dylan.
Yeah, so in a way, I think almost like filmmaking chose me, because I really didn't know what I wanted to study when I left high school. I had some ideas, and I think for me, I had all these different interests, which was like visual arts, design, music, and I in a way, I always thought I was going to be a cartoonist. But I had all these varying interests, and I think film was like this way to bring it all together. And I applied to study at UCT, where I'm teaching now, and that's where I was able to kind of have a multidisciplinary approach to film study. So which is one of the nice things about studying, I guess, at a university in the humanities, like in a School of Humanities, is that you could do electives in different classes. I was studying like French. I was studying Xhosa, and I was just kind of trying to soak up as much as I could. But it was really but while doing a major in film, and then while doing the major in film, I actually really discovered documentary, and that's where everything kind of came together in my head. It's like puzzle pieces came together, and it was really a class by Lindy Wilson when she came to teach us. I think it was in third year of my degree. And she made a film about the Gugulethu 7, who were murdered by the apartheid police, and she made a film about District 6, which was an area in Cape Town that was demolished by the apartheid government. It was this area that was close to the inner city that was demolished to. It was declared a whites-only area and was supposed to be rebuilt for white people only. And so she made a film about the last family there. And when I was watching that film, which was shot on 16mm, and I was like, okay, this is something I'd like to do. This is something I think I can do this. And like I said, all those puzzle pieces came together, and I started working as a filmmaker after. I made a film as part of my final submission in fourth year, which was my honors year, with my friend Sean Drummond. We directed a film together about Prophets of the City, which was the first hip hop group in South Africa. Because at the time I was only listening to hip hop all the time, and I was very into the history of hip hop in South Africa. They were the first hip hop group, and it was really important to me to tell their story properly. And we made this film, which was a student film, got it into some festivals, and that's how I started working as a documentary director. So basically being a film student was really important to me in terms of being able to actually figure out a way forward, or actually understand film and understand documentaries. I don't think I really understood those things going into the university system as an 18-year-old, like not really knowing anything about the world, really, and then learning a lot in the process.
And you both share, I mean, in different continents and different times, different decades, but you were both students at institutions that weren't necessarily designed for you. You located yourself as underrepresented in yours, Driso, and I know you in Cape Town at that time. Could you talk about that, being a student in that context, and how that has shaped you, or at least had an impact, or made you reflect or think of you? If you want to start, Dylan.
Yeah, okay. So for me, being at UCT at that time was very different to how it is now. I'm teaching in the same school that I was studying in, and when I came back to campus last year before lockdown, I was just shocked at how different everything felt after the Fees Must Fall student movement, which is all about decolonization, removing colonial statues, but also attempting to decolonize the curriculum and be more inclusive, scrapping fees, which started with Roads Must Fall. And the hall that we used to graduate in was called the Jamison Hall, Frederick Jamison Hall, which was a friend of Cecil John Rhodes. And we used to call it Jammy Hall and not really think anything about, oh, that's Jammy Hall. And now it's called Sarah Bartman Hall, which was, she was like famously taken from, she was a Khoi woman taken from the Cape and put on display in Europe and, had a tragic life. So there's this renaming of the place, and this feels like a reclaiming of space. And at the time, I really think I didn't really have any of these tools to unpack what I was feeling at the time. I think we, in the early 2000s, it was like quite fresh after apartheid ended. And like in 2003 was when I studied, started. And we were still in this kind of phase of the Rainbow Nation, and we were just kind of accepting that we were lucky to be there. I remember being told things like that as well by guidance counselors. Like, you guys are really lucky to be here. And you kind of internalize this thing of like feeling a little bit out of place or alien to the environment, but that you have to assimilate and just kind of absorb as much as you can. And that's what I remember from that time. And I remember that there were certain groups who were starting this conversation of decolonization, but they were like seen as fringe groups or like too radical, by like the mainstream. And now it's like in universities in Africa, decolonization, like even the most conservative academic is talking about decolonization, because that's what's the language. That's the language of the day. So
the danger of that we discuss another day.
yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah.
Idriso.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear all, what Dylan is telling us. My experience was a bit different. I was in a white school, but this kind of debate, did not exist, right? In Germany, there was no debate about race, about minorities, about inclusion. There was nothing like that, at my time, right? So, but I was just exotic for the people. They don't see people like me. Back. When I first applied for the school and I got invited, I remember there's one of administrators, a lady who asked me, say, we have never seen someone, like you coming from Africa, not speaking very well German or speaking German with accent, and who, succeeds to this exam. It's difficult. We see people studying technology, I mean, film technique, like, DPs and editing and so on, but directing, she said, I advise you to apply for all this technical stuff, and not for you have more chance to be accepted and I was so upset with what she's saying, that's what I said, I was so, and I had to say, you are not a professor here in film school. You are just here to inform us what to do, how to apply, and what I'm applying for is my my business. Okay, let me apply for that. And then she was the first to congratulate me when I got accepted. You have to. I think it's the same case in South Africa. Film school here in Germany and in Europe are very competitive. The selection exam are very difficult, right? So, and I got accepted at the time. And when I started studying, I noticed how few we were, people of colors at the time. There were, I think, three maximum. We were three people of color in this school. One from Peru, another from Guyana, and me. Oh, there was also another young man from Brazil, right? So that was, for a school that was, of I think more than 500 students. There's just four of us, right? So you can see the ambience, right? Anywhere you go, you've been noticed, right? And nothing in the curriculum tell your story, right? Make reference to where you come from, what, there's no space actually. You have to be, part of the mass, but nothing in your culture, not it taught in this school. So a kind of strategy to survive in the school is that to give yourself a goal. Say, just want to finish, just want to take what I really need, and then get away from this place, right? I mean, my professors they were nice. Most of them were nice. So just I made, this, my perspective. I miss, people who look like me. I miss people who care about what I care for, right? Sorry, Africans and Black minority and so many, underrepresented people and justice and so on, right? That is something really that I missed a lot. But at the time I didn't have tools to deconstruct what was going on or to create any movement to say, okay, we have to create a space for the other people who, other young men who want to study here, to make them this space also, viewable for them, right? But once in the United States, when I myself started teaching, this problem came, came to me now. I'm in an environment in a school where we now talk about all these, aspect, what inclusion, what being a minority mean, what being, in a place where nothing is told about you, about your, where you come from, your culture, because the discussion is right now in the United States, it's happening right now in the United States. I teach in a white, in a white school too, where you have very few Black or people of color. Dilam, maybe University of Southern California is different. It's more diverse than my school. So I don't know. I had never been there, but it's interesting. That allowed me to look back, say to see my own case, to see my what I went through. I understand now what these young men, young girls are going through now. People of color who want to study film, in an environment where people think that they have nothing to do nothing to look there. They are not part of the movement. That's the way I felt when I was there. I had a feeling that people think that I'm not part of that. I don't belong there, to this space, right? So that's how I feel, and it gave me tools to help young people of colors, who now who are lost in our environment, now in our school, who tried also to be part of the movement, to be, to appropriate, this movement, filmmaking, as their own.
Which also, please feel free to comment on each other or ask each other further questions if you have. But I'm thinking then, both of you, how these experiences inform your teaching today when there is, I mean, the discourse and the vocabulary is there, but there's still a space it's not all served and lined up and all problems sorted, but like how your approach now today as inclusive educators, if I call it that, to cover everything, all the mechanisms of exclusion, structural and psychological and otherwise. So can you talk about how it informed your teaching or your approach to education? Do you want to start, Dylan?
Yes, definitely. I just want to also say to Jisoo, USC is exactly the same as you explained now. When I was studying in the States, so before, that was quite a shock actually to see. I think there was one black person in my cohort, aside from myself, like an African American woman, who actually left halfway through because she really had a career. I think she was quite busy with that, and she left halfway through. So it was quite shocking to see actually in the States, because I think at the time I thought the States would be super diverse and all that stuff, university. But in terms of how I try and be inclusive now in the classroom, I think for me it's about really decentering the West. That's the way I would describe it. I really try and decenter Western thinking, and it's hard because we're still teaching in English, and we still a lot of our references are going to either be Western cinema or influenced by the West in some way. But I really try through like my theoretical thinking around film and how it works. Is really I draw a lot from the third cinema ideologies. Especially there's a article by Julio Garcia Espinosa, which has become kind of like a mantra of mine, which is it's called For an Imperfect Cinema. And for me, that has reading that really just opened up a whole world of thinking about film for me, because it's really about reframing what is important to you when you're making a film. So kind of like what Idrisu was saying, it's like, do you want to have an aesthetically and technically perfect film, or would you have a film that really speaks to you or speaks to your experience, or that actually is saying something about the world, or that is trying to achieve something, or trying to really affect people in a certain way, or push things forward? And so for me, that is how I really try and change things now. And I also, just in small practical ways, if I'm teaching a class, whether it's on sound or camera or web series, because now I teach mostly about web series, I try and use I focus on African examples or African American examples. That's like the closest I have, or Africans in the diaspora, so like Black British filmmakers or things like that. Or if I try and look in small ways of just centering the Black experience globally in my work, because that's also what I'm just interested in. Also, it's not that it's also not like a huge leap for me to do it. It's just kind of also trying to center my own experience and my own interests. And I think that through that it translates better to the students as well. From what I've seen, it's able to reach them a little bit better. I'm also thinking about emerging technologies, incorporating those kinds of things into the teaching experience, which is still an ongoing process for me. There's also a lot of things developers now for film students, like everybody's on TikTok and things like that. So it's about trying to understand that in the context of film studies, which is not necessarily an easy fit. So I'm busy kind of working through these ideas while I'm doing stuff.
Working through in terms of finding ways to, can you expand on that? What is the grapple? What are you grappling with?
So I was grappling with how do you, for example, how do you kind of make sense of all the stuff that's happening on YouTube, all the, like, and at the time when I started teaching web series, I was very much focused on, like I started with the work of Issa Rae, who made the Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl, and so when I was at USC, I did my master's thesis on her work, and made a short documentary about time. But so I've been kind of grappling with how does web series fit into like a film studies program, and then how that time. And web series are so varied and amorphous that sometimes a web series is more like a vlog, or it's more like, and a vlog is not filmmaking, So, but sometimes it is. Sometimes a vlog, you can make a film in the style of a vlog. So I've been thinking a lot about these things and how to actually incorporate them into filmmaking in a meaningful way, and not spending too much time on the kind of the sea of content that you find these days online. But actually, how do you apply a filmmaker's voice to these new tools, and actually how to use them in the way that a filmmaker should. And so at the beginning, I was kind of thinking about, I was teaching this web series class, I was teaching about vlogging and these things and how this works and how that works. And I really honed it down to just kind of focusing on web series, because that is, for me, that's the most filmmaker-like element of these new kinds of cinematic and television forms that I found online. And in a way, web series had a moment where a lot of people were making them, and now they're not as popular as they used to be. And so trying to think like, what is replacing that? And is there a place for using these forms in TV? And I think, well, in TV and film, and I've seen also how a lot of these forms of new online forms of creating visual content is that have influenced filmmaking, influenced television. But it's also important to draw distinctions and lines between these things, so to bog down in the like all the plethora of things that are out there, and it becomes quite overwhelming. So that's what I mean by working through it. And but now what I've done is I kind of honed down on web series. So I taught a web series class at BITS. We've got students make a 3-part web series, which is like a research project. And now taking that model, and we're doing that with filmmakers in different countries, and the project called Black Women Disrupt the Web. And with a friend of mine, Zakia Carr-Johnson, who has an organization called Black Women Disrupt, and my wife, Antoinette, and also we're doing this project together. And it's really exciting to actually see how this works, because my theory around web series also is that, and the way I'm thinking about web series is actually that stories that don't normally get told are able to get told through this. So because there's a lack of gatekeepers, traditionally, people who have been marginalized won't be marginalized in making web series, because you have people to answer to, which is also why I was really interested in becoming a documentary filmmaker, because I didn't want to go through these giant structures of filmmaking, especially in South Africa, which are like very untransformed, especially even to today, like especially in Cape Town. And I was like, okay, I just want to make a film by myself, like me and a camera and like a few people that I know. And web series has that that kind of energy behind it too, like DIY. So I hope I'm answering the question.
Yeah.
I feel like
you totally did, because you also got close to something else that I want to bring up later. So I'm going to interrupt you there and ask Idrisu the same question about your approach to inclusive approaches and strategies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is really, I won't say it's difficult. That's my duty actually to make a space safe for everyone as a professor. My students are coming from different background. They have different expectations. And like 90% of American students, Hollywood is play a important roles. Most of the students, they have seen only Hollywood films when they come to school, right? Or Marvel films, so most of them, right? They want to make films like this film they have seen, coming from Hollywood, right? So how do you cope between your ideas, my ideas, and the expectation of my student, while creating also a space for the minorities, right? So I want to make sure, I always make sure that everyone has a place. That every stories had is matter, right? In everyone's story is matter. Minority story or welcome matter discussed in the school. So I make sure also that the selection of film, the example, that's I want my student to know that there are also the rest of the world also make films, right? The global cinema is very important for me. While take an example of films, coming from the rest of the world. The global South also makes films. An example of Jimmy Mambete's film, for instance, young Americans never heard his name, but I want make them, create a familiarity with these names, with you know names like Ozu or South African filmmakers, right? Say Suleiman, my friend Suleiman's films, for instance. Okay, so they never heard this name, right? So just to know, to make these my kids from minority, who come from minority, that they can also tell the story, right? And at the same time, for people to broaden, right, enlarge the horizon of the American kids, white kids who never heard about that, who just know Hollywood's name like Tarantino and so on, to make them, discover names of cinema, a different storytelling tradition they never heard before. That's how we can I allow my students to find their own voice, right? You see, there's so many young men and girls who are dreaming of becoming filmmakers everywhere. So what we make it different, what uniqueness in the storytelling is, the few who are really willing to, diversify the the way of seeing film traditions in the world. So that stuff for me is essential, and Dylan was talking about decolonizing the curriculum for us. That's very important. How do we decolonize the curriculum? It's that, and I think my role, and through my background, contribute a lot in this. Decolonization but because decolonization is not just about those who were colonized. Also, the people who belong to the majority need also to deconstruct their way of, the way they see the world, right? So that's a very important for me, my teaching, right?
And now I'm trying to like bring together what you said, because now I was thinking in general, then if we can talk about in this context where so film schools traditionally maybe have been focused on tradition or teaching one canon, one way of seeing, one way of doing, and this has translated into technical ways, how to shoot, how to teach, how to capture sound, what is noise, what is sound, etc. What is how do you technical issues, but also a narrative. I don't know what word I should use, but like how you approach story, so to say. So if I would ask what your thoughts are today, it's almost like a case for film school, like because we are also in a time where technique has been decolonized, if we use that word, where technically and perhaps not. We always say that anyone can pick up a phone or a camera and shoot a film, but then make a case for film school, perhaps for me, and help me understand in that light the role and duty of film schools today, in your opinion. Who wants to start? Do you want to start?
This is an interesting question. It's really interesting as a question, because it's all this discussion is ongoing, right? Do I need to go to a film school? I would say yes, you need to go to film school. Why? Most, as I said, most of the students who come to the film school, there are some who believe they have an experience, a standard experience. My students, when they come, they say, yo, I have so much experience. I did 20 films before, before I come to the film school. But what kind of films you made, right? And people think that just taking the camera and filming, turning the camera on and then out, it's a film. Right? Or because I know how to edit, I know how Premiere work, I know how the camera work. My father bought me, I don't know, a red one or even smaller. So I'm a filmmaker because I shot. And also in the film school, you understand that everything you thought was filmmaking are not. Are not. You need to accept that you know nothing and learn from the beginning, right? And you cannot just, a film school allowed you to eliminate many things that you think were filmmaking, were part of filmmaking, and keep the most essential, right? And film school expose you with different film tradition, filmmaking, storytelling tradition, different professors, who have different approach in filmmaking at the same time, right? The 4 years you spend in the film school, you are exposed to all this, variety of, film tradition and approaches that you will never have when staying at home, right? Or with textbook. And film school is not just textbook. It's also the practice. It's about experience sharing. The professor's experience. And different experience, right? How they solve different. They went through different challenges, right? You don't have this chance outside, to meet these people, and you meet them in school. They share how they solve a concrete problem they face while shooting a film, right? I still remember my professors told me the experience with an actor, how was the conflict, how you best solve a specific conflict with an actor, or the conflict that's happened, within the crew, right? Film school learned you how the crew dynamic, for instance, and shooting outside with your friend is also not a dynamic, but it's not the same as in the film school. So we are not just learning. It's not about camera. It's not about sound equipment. It's about also human. How human interact with another. Within a crew, right? So that you learn. And so you cannot compare what people are learning through internet today with what they are learning with what people are able to learn in the film school.
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. There's so much that you don't learn from YouTube tutorials. I mean, you can literally teach yourself how to use a camera, how to take good sound, all through YouTube, which also is somebody teaching you, right? So somebody is having to like sit down and do it. So it's still teaching. So there's some transfer of knowledge even on YouTube, but you can go and learn all this stuff. But like Idrisu, like you were saying, there's so much of the human experience that you're going to miss. And I think being a good filmmaker requires good mentoring from another filmmaker. For most people, I think everybody has their own journey, but I think that a film school it's also about meeting others and about finding people that you work with. It's about being in a pressure cooker environment where you and your peers have to do stuff together. There's a deadline, and you build strong relationships. So not only with your professors, who hopefully some of them will become really strong mentors for you going forward, but also with others. So you actually get to meet other people. So friends of mine, I'm still friends with a lot of people I studied with, and sometimes we work together. Sometimes we don't, but we help each other out if there's opportunities or things like that. And we learn from each other. And I've got friends who I studied with who are doing really great work, and just even if I don't work with them, just seeing them excel and do well makes me feel like I can do the same, because we had the same opportunities. We came into the film industry together, we came to studying together. And I think also studying at a good film school also means that you get exposed to understanding also a little bit about how the world works, and also understanding how, for example, like how power works in the world, and understanding how power, injustice, all these things play out, which is what a university should really teach you, what a good kind of degree should teach you, is to think critically about the world. And a film studies program should also incorporate all those things. It's really crucial for film students to actually think critically about the world. And this is the role of universities. I mean, universities are becoming more and more corporate in the sense that, the universities are expected to deliver this product. And if you pay your money, you then get the degree, which is really, it's sad to see the erosion of what a university is over time, this kind of global capitalist world that we live in. And I've seen these ads on YouTube, which basically like saying things like, "Don't go to film school. I can teach you in 5 easy steps how to make a film." Nobody wants to know how films used to get made. We'll show you. And I think that kind of thinking, there's a place for that for people who don't want to go to university, but I think they're missing so much in that we're not at university, you're not just learning how to use a camera. And I think it's really important to remember that.
And sorry. No.
Just small thing I want to add. Film school also, give to all the students, independent of their background, rich or poor, right? And so they are allowed to make some mistake, right? We have tools for that. We are there as professor to advise anyone, right? So you can have this conversation with your mentor, with your professor. It's not important if you are rich or poor, right? So it's 4 years of mistakes, allowed, mistakes, right? That's you would not be able to do outside, right? So I always tell to my student, I'm not, expecting, from you to make a great film that will go to Sundance or so on, but I'm here. You are here to make some mistakes. That's it. Don't worry about that. That's why you are here, right? So this, and you have all this stuff, all these cameras, all these tools. You can take any time you want and go. Not everyone is rich to buy a red one and so on, right? to do that, right? Otherwise, only rich people can make films, right? If you can pay for YouTube and take your classes, right, and let your father buy a red one for you, so you can say that no one in Africa will be able to make a film, to make a film in Benin, right? So film school is definitely important, but I want to also emphasize the fact that I see today in Africa so many schools are open, so they without any curriculum, anything, any program, right? It's just making money. Most of the people who are up in school everywhere, they just want to make money. They know filmmaking is very attractive for young ladies and men in Africa. So, I can see in my own country, in every corner today, you have a film school. And then you ask yourself, so who teach in this school? With what curriculum? What program? What material? What equipment they teach? What is the philosophy of teaching in the school? So that's an important question today in Africa. Film school, yes, but what kind of school, right? So that's very important.
And that is, I was actually trying to segue into that. So not everyone everywhere has access to university education. So what are your thoughts around that? So university isn't always the only option for logistical, financial, every reason. But there is, I totally agree with that there is also this industrial complex or money making schemes that aren't helping. Like what are your thoughts around that in general? You started Idrissa, maybe Dylan, you want to continue, and Idrissa too, both of you.
Yeah, I think that universities should do more to be outward facing and offer a lot of, and I think some universities are doing this kind of programs, where you do like summer school programs that are free and open to public, where you have where you have the professors or the lecturers who are normally teaching in the semester could teach for free. Obviously, they don't do that because you want to have a break at some point. But there should be there should be more of these kinds of outward facing programs. Make sure that universities also think about how to use the research and the teaching for social change, social upliftment towards good. I think that's the kind of thing that I think would be important to see. The things that really need to change instead of building more walls around academia. And I think a lot of the online teaching stuff might end up also with that kind of thing. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to make money out of this time where we all on Zoom and stuff. And so I think there'll be a lot of that too, like just paying for courses online and things like that. And there's something very different about a communal teaching and learning experience that it's very hard to replicate online. I think you can with a lot of work, but I don't think it's the same like being in this space. So I think also like film labs are really important as an alternative like filmmaking educational structure. So a place where you don't have to get a university degree. For certain people who know that they on a filmmaking path. I think for someone like me, I wasn't sure where I was going. So being in a university was really useful. But for someone who's very clear on what kind of wanting to be a filmmaker and what kind of film they want to make, something like a film lab would be really important. So I think more film labs in the country would be good. Not necessarily universities or more film schools, but like labs where people can get mentorship to make that choice. And I think mentorship is really key.
And yeah, I like the idea really that some universities in Africa now are creating a department for film, which is actually good, which will allow people from poor families that to be able to study filmmaking, right? And so I'm more skeptical about these private schools, right? Where in which the state has no control, right? But the university has we have how university are structure. So that's something we can encourage in for African cases, for instance. And regarding teacher, also I like the idea also of organizing workshop, right? Because working filmmakers don't have time to teach, right? For entire, they can have time for 2 months, and so if you can have all these filmmakers, to come down, I mean, to this department, to organize a kind, a class in form of a workshop, right? And so students can be exposed to different filmmaking tradition. Right now, see, Africa is not using the potential they have with all these filmmakers who are around, walking around the world, but we are not using them, as teachers, sharing their experience in the continent, for instance, right? So we need first this, a department, a good department, well organized, department, that has a vision, to use all this potential. Many filmmakers, I see them, in Europe, even in Europe or somewhere else, but not sharing the experience with young Africans, for instance, right? So that can be something we have to we have to encourage in the continent, right? So I mean, in the United States, we have a long summer break. So as a filmmaker, you can you can take this summer 3 month break, to make your film, or to bring your experience to other, to share your experience with other young Africans. But I don't see a well-organized or institution in Africa that encourage this kind of collaboration right now. So that could be something we have to think about in the future.
Yeah. There are, I did, we have a little bit less, or around 5 minutes left. I actually have two things I wanted to ask about. One is, I mean, with the number of film schools and aspiring filmmakers who don't like it, there's also could be a machinery that churn out a lot of people who identify as filmmakers, but the problem on the continent, like I think that is spreading also, is that there are not many viable industries. Like that, does film teaching and education, do you, I say you, do you have a role in teaching people how to build industries, so to say, or viable landscapes for filmmaking? Who wants to put Dylan?
Yeah, I think that is really like something that was missing for me, being a young film graduate, getting out of film school, and just kind of feeling very rudderless for quite a while, like not knowing, how I was going to make a living, or like how I was going to make money. And I know when I did at USC, when I did my master's, we did a class called monetization, which at the time felt a bit like people were really reaching, into like, let's try and figure out how we're going to make money out of these skills we're using, because that was an interdisciplinary journalism program, which also incorporated some film and that kind of stuff. And I think that those kinds of classes, though, are really useful because it helps you to start thinking about how to not only find a job, but also how to monetize things. And I think there are some opportunities now in this digital world for ways of entering the film industry that weren't there before. And so I think that there are opportunities for filmmakers, and especially I think in filmmakers from the global south, to kind of to leapfrog into new industries, new technologies, and that kind of thing. So I think that's really important to look at too.
Yeah. And I mean, the good news is that we now are experiencing how platform like a Netflix now interested in our culture on what we are doing, right? Amazon, maybe we follow. Yet we have so many. Many years ago there were so many gatekeepers for us. Not interested in what we are doing in the South, right? And so I think we are going through these difficulties today, right? And you can even create a web page and sell your film, right? And through this, I mean, COVID situation, I noticed how possibilities of this difficult time had created another form of synergy, right? And for us, for African and people from the global South, right? Again, how new possibilities, show up to us, right? So I think there's definitely a hope, right, for African filmmakers, but we have to start from with the qualities, what film we are doing. We have to keep working, making film for our audience first, for African audience. If you're Africans, when you are writing a film, think about your audience who are first. Your first audience are Africans, right? And I mean, making film is not, imitating Hollywood. We have to find our own language, cinematographic language, right? So create something original, right? That's how we can also export our culture, our cinematographic culture to the world. So that's how I see it.
Cool. This could really continue. Did you want to add some? Sorry.
No, it's just a train that's very loud. So I think that's maybe what you're hearing.
Yeah. I think at one point we'll need a part 2 of this one. Any parting words that any about either how you see the comments on the future or the present, or any parting words from? And I have that from both of you.
I'd like to add a little bit about the streaming stuff. So I think there is definitely a lot of scope for starting new streaming services. I'm really excited to see what kind of versions of Netflix will exist in the next few years, where we could have African cinema available online to stream. There's so many documentaries and films that is just like inaccessible. Like you just can't watch it, even if you're ready to, you have the cash to pay for it or whatever. And I think that is it's a clear opportunity to put all of our stuff online and be able to stream that stuff. So I think that's one way that we're going to see new opportunities coming out. I think there'll also be, I think it's also just one other thing I'll say is important for filmmakers to think in entrepreneurial ways and to really learn about money and how to manage money, how to save, how to invest. And I think that's something that if the film students are listening now, and you're young in your early 20s, really start thinking about how do you save your money and find ways and talk to all the filmmakers who are doing this, how have they managed to have sustainable careers. I think that's really something that's missing also out of film studies and film conversations, is really like how to manage these kinds of forms of income where you're not getting like a salary every month, year in, year out, stable income. But there is money to be made, but it's about how do you manage it. And I think it's not a sexy, interesting conversation, but it's really important in terms of us having, like being able to do the things we want to do and to have stable and healthy lives. So that's just something that I think is also important to add in parting, as a parting shot.
Thank you. Producer?
Yeah, so I mean, just want to emphasize one point that's important. So remind the young filmmakers, an aspect of filmmaking that's really essential is your writing, right? Your writing, enhance your writing, improve your writing, write. And how to do that best is to be educated. Educate yourself, read a lot, don't exclude any aspect of social life, right? You read, and watch film, interesting film, allowed. So that's really important, to be able to create your own voice. You need to see as much as you can, films. You need to read, a lot, literature. The most important filmmakers in the world, like Kazan and so on, they were great readers, right? Fellini, Bergman, all were great readers, right? So they know that's how they understood how story work, right? How drama works, right? So don't exclude this part. Don't be lazy. That's important, right? Without a story, there's no film. Right, so that's important. I remember I met some students who say, I choose to become a filmmaker because I hate reading. Right. I want to say this. Then I say, you are at the right place. I told him. so don't do that. Okay.
Oh, that's super valuable. Thank you, Idriso Morakpai. Thank you, Dylan Valley. This has been most interesting. I could really continue. Yeah, thank you both.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.